Good afternoon. Welcome to the Blunt Talk Sports Podcast. I'm your host, Anthony Wright, coming to you from the lovely confines of Atlantic City on another nice, beautiful spring day. I hope you guys are enjoying it, whether on your commute to work, working out, or wherever you may be. I hope that you're tuning in, listening, getting your sports news and facts from me again this morning. And I just want to again say like, share, and subscribe to those that haven't already. I've definitely been seeing a ton of support out there for the channel and the page. And I just, again, want to thank all of you guys, every last one of you, for everything that you've been able to do, whether it's just been, inboxing me, liking, sharing, posting on your page. I appreciate it all. It all goes towards the page. It all goes towards us growing this network together and ultimately telling the stories and sports stories that we want to hear about instead of the same mundane things that you typically get on ESPN or some of the other channels, So I digress. Nonetheless, I will get started and follow up with our segments. Episode 3, follow up with our segment of 32 teams in 13 days, actually less than 10 days now leading into the NFL draft. Draft is fast approaching. So you're going to see me start picking up the content a bit. I'm going to slow it down a little bit so that way I don't lose too many people with some of the jargon. I know some of the football jargon and terminology can kind of be a little bit wordy or a little bit, leads you a little wayward. So I'm going to kind of take my time and kind of walk you through it. We got about 2 to 3 teams now that we're going to be taking on a day until we're finished and leading into the draft. And I will also be having a show that night as well as draft coverage going over the first round. But to start today, we're going to examine the Los Angeles Chargers and the season that they had last year, in which they went 5-12. Brandon Staley's last year, good riddance. I have family and friends that I know that are Chargers fans that are ecstatic that Brandon Staley is no longer the head coach. Definitely didn't know what he was doing as far as offense. I mean, when you have Justin Herbert, and you can't seem to win a playoff game or just have sustained consistency on offense, that's a problem. And last but not least, the defense was just horrendous while he was, the coach. Your staple is defense, and you couldn't even get that right. But we'll continue to dive in further. But hope has sprung eternal, or spring hopes eternal, I guess, or however they word it. But right now, Jim Harbaugh is now the new coach of the Los Angeles Chargers. They also have new GM Joe Horitz. Whole new regime that they're coming in. The Spanos family wants to try to do something new, and I can't really blame them. I mean, ultimately, that team has just been floundering for years. I never felt like Brandon Staley did everything that was needed or everything that was required to have that team in top shape competing. God knows the injuries, but again, we'll expand on all of that. New offensive coordinator Greg Roman, which is a familiar face to Jim Harbaugh. Jim Harbaugh actually previously worked with Greg Roman while in San Francisco many moons ago, which led to the eventual Super Bowl run that they had. And if for some that are real diehards that know, Greg Roman was also the coordinator for Lamar Jackson at the beginning of his career when he won his first MVP. So definitely good things, good news for Justin Herbert. Definitely ecstatic for him. I mean, when you think about the fact that you're getting a guy that knows offense, a guy that's tenured, seasoned within the league, knows what he's doing as far as getting an offense ready, having an offense capable. I mean, I just keep this in mind, guys. Colin Kaepernick was told he could not be a starter. Lamar Jackson was told by the great Bill Polian, if I remember correctly, that he should try out for wide receiver and not quarterback. So clearly this guy knows what he's doing. He knows how to get the best out of guys, especially in that position. So Justin Herbert should definitely look forward to that this upcoming season. They have a new defensive coordinator, which again, obviously Brandon Staley was kind of last year the de facto defensive coordinator, if you call that. Jesse Minter, who's basically carrying over with Jim Harbaugh from Michigan. So kind of keeping some continuity there going. If you've seen any of the defenses at Michigan during Jim Harbaugh's tenure, all of those defenses were ferocious, big defensive linemen, attacking, aggressive, corners were aggressive. So, ultimately that San Francisco 49ers style, that style that Jim Harbaugh just naturally carries wherever he goes. Aggressive, tenacious, in your face, attack the day, have, all those colloquialisms that Jim Harbaugh uses to prepare his team and to amplify the message that he needs to come across with his team. They have about $30 million in cap space. A lot of that was due to reworking a lot of deals with Khalil Mack and Joey Bosa. Obviously, as some of you may know, if you don't, they released Mike Williams and Keenan Allen. Huge offensive pieces, but Mike Williams, typically always injured. So, I guess, it's not the end of the world letting him go. Keenan Allen, though, that is going to be definitely a loss. His production, Keenan Allen's one of the best receivers in the league. Last year he had I believe he had arguably his best season of his career. And there was, I understand why he didn't take a pay cut. How in the hell do I have the best, season of my career where I put up the best numbers, and then you're saying to me, yeah, take a pay cut. Yeah, we want you to take less. We got to do it for the team. Nah. And besides, now with Keenan going to Chicago, playing with Caleb Williams, having DeAndre Swift in the backfield, Cole Kmet, DJ Moore, he'll be his skill set will be shown more within that offense. So it all works out. The Chargers have 9 draft picks in total. It shows here they have 2 in the 4th round and 2 in the 7th round. Kind of interesting because, again, new regime, so you don't really know how they're addressing it, but I kind of feel like they are definitely a trade candidate. It just 9 picks. It's not bad. It's not bad at all. Especially for a team with, the injuries and issues that they've had over the past couple of years. But talent really isn't the issue with this team. It's been really more or less staying healthy, offensive philosophy, and defensive scheme. So, be that as it may, just keep that in mind, guys, for any of you Chargers fans out there. Keep in mind they're probably going to be trading and moving around some of these picks. Going into free agency, obviously they had some key departures. You lost Gerald Everett. You lost Mike Williams. You let go of Keenan Allen. Also, one very underrated move that, people talk about, kind of don't talk about a lot. Austin Eckler leaving. He eventually landed in Washington with the Commanders. But Eckler, a touchdown machine. A guy that's productive, a guy that just ultimately does anything that's asked, whether it's catching the ball out the backfield, running the ball, blocking. He does a little bit of everything. So, yeah, definitely be missed there. But we know how it is now in the NFL. Running backs, hell, guys, they'll probably find a running back within the 3rd, 4th, 5th round. This guy will come in, look good next to Herbert, look good with that offensive line in that system. And before we know it, we'll be like, oh, yeah, Eckler's in Washington doing whatever. So, be that as it may, Bosa and Mack obviously restructured their contracts to stay, which, again, was crucial moves. I think them two being in a Jim Harbaugh defense will be phenomenal. If anybody remembers the great NaVorro Bowman, Patrick Willis, Justin Smiths, those guys that played in San Francisco when Jim Harbaugh was there. If you remember what those guys did defensively, just imagine what Bosa and Mack can do. Coming off, especially the year Khalil Mack had last year. He had a phenomenal year last year. I just think that it's going to be a recipe for great things, ahead for them. Looking at the free agent acquisitions, they brought in Christian Fulton. They brought back Denzel Perryman, former 1st-round pick from 2015, so familiar face, a body that they needed, definitely could help in the linebacker position. They brought Hayden Hurst in. Hayden Hurst just, the year prior was playing Carolina, as I touched on in the first episode. He's now in Los Angeles playing for the Chargers. Will Dissly, as longtime Seattle Seahawk, is now no longer a Seahawk. He is now a Charger. Aloy Gilman, safety, he's been brought back. And a great low-key acquisition that I don't feel a lot of people are talking about, Gus Edwards. Gus Edwards is a fucking battering ram. This guy, punch. That's how he attacks the line. I was kind of shocked that Baltimore let him go, but again, just as I previously stated a couple minutes ago, finding running backs aren't the hardest thing in the world or the worst thing to do, or it's not the most strenuous task to find a running back in the 5th or 6th round, and this guy wound up being a 1,000-yard rusher. So, be that as it may, getting Gus Edwards in there in that offense, I think will help, Justin Herbert. Some of the last few things I want to touch on before I get on some of their draft tracker and visits that they've had. How will that offense look without Keenan Allen and Mike Williams and Austin Eckler? It's a lot of change. And don't get me wrong, I think it's change that's needed. I'm a big proponent. I have a saying that if we haven't won anything with you, it's not going to be a damn problem letting you go because we ain't won a damn thing with you. So ultimately, we ain't won nothing with you, we can let you go. So I just feel like more or less they got to see, though, offensively, they definitely going to need a receiver. I think they cannot leave this draft without taking a receiver. That is just without a fact. You don't lose that type of production and think, well, Quentin Johnson didn't show you as much. Now, maybe Maybe that's Brandon Staley's ineptitude. Maybe that was the coaching. I don't know. The environment, the pressure, being a top 20 pick. I mean, hell, as an Eagles fan, I can remember Jalen Reagor, Nelson Aguilar. I remember these guys. I remember these guys not really panning out, being top 20 picks. So, is he more on the line of a Nelson Aguilar, Jalen Reagor, or is he a guy that just needed a little bit more season? They need to be in the right offense, with a little bit more coaching and love and TLC. So, we'll see. But again, big production that they're going to have to replace. And last but not least, can they stay healthy? I mean, damn. I mean, when you really realize that this team the past 3 to 4 years has suffered some of the most horrendous injuries. There is literally a punchline where, if the Chargers stay healthy, I mean, it's when you have to literally articulate that every time you talk about a football team, that's not a good thing. That's not a good thing. I don't know if it's a strength and conditioning coach issue. I don't know if it's a nutrition issue. I don't know if it's, the guys they draft, they aren't really workout freaks, or their bones aren't dense enough to take on the brunt of the punishment. Playing football before a little league in high school, I understand it's a physical sport. So, sometimes, your body can't take the brunt of those hits, your knees, joints, back, all of those different types of things that you don't even think of could suffer injury. So I get it. But at the same time, you've suffered major injuries year in, year out. I mean, it's one thing to have a guy here, a guy there missing. Some years you get hit with the injury bug. Hell, you may have half your offense, half your defense missing due to injury. What strikes me, though, is every year this happens for the Chargers. Every year this happens for the Chargers. So interested to see how they address that. And, one other thing. I'm sorry. I did say last but not least, but I was wrong about that. Last thing I want to touch on is, does Herbert take the next step? I mean, Justin Herbert was something we got to keep in mind, guys. Joe Burrow's been to a Super Bowl. Jalen Hurts has been to a Super Bowl. Jordan Love showed a lot of promise last year. Tua's played well. We got one playoff game. Tua's been twice. Just keep that in mind. Tua's been twice. We have no idea what Justin Herbert can do. Now, with better coaching now, we expect better. Like I said, I'll give my preseason outlook and season outlook predictions once the draft is over. But he's got to take the next step. Completion percentage and his numbers haven't been horrible. It hasn't been like he's been, shit in the bed. But for lack of better words, he hasn't really grown. He hasn't taken those next steps like we've seen Josh Allen or Jalen Hurts or Lamar Jackson, where it's like, you see it, click, 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 click. You see it, okay. He's just stays stagnant. So again, we'll see now with new coaching how he addresses that. But as far as the top 30 visits, some of the names you've already been used to hearing: Malik Neighbors, Brendan Rice. As I've stated him in many episodes, he's been in for several visits, the son of Jerry Rice. Brendan Fisk from Florida State University for the Seminoles, defensive tackle. Edrin Cooper, linebacker for Texas A&M, has also been in for a visit. DeCameron Richardson, cornerback from Mississippi State. Again, all top-notch guys, all guys potentially that they could take. Here's the issue. 2 red flags that I will not even allow to slip my mind. I've not seen Marvin Harrison on a visit to the Chargers. And I just personally think there's a reason why. There's no need for him to have to visit because he's probably not going to be there. So Malik Neighbors might be that pick. I mean, logic speaking. But interesting, the other tidbit, no offensive linemen have been in for visits. Now, keep this in mind, guys. I'm not trying to infer or say that that's ineptitude. What I'm illustrating, though, is Jim Harbaugh has been recruiting now for the past several years, 5 years minimum in college football. He knows all these linemen, all these skill position players coming out. Some of these guys he's actually sat down with at their kitchen tables with their parents, grandparents, aunts, uncles, whomever, and recruited these kids. So him not looking at any linemen on pre-draft visits probably wasn't a need because he's already seen them and he knows exactly what he wants out of his linemen. So very interested to see. They're going to be a mystery team in that top 5, top 6. I'm definitely looking into that's got a chance to make some major moves and got a chance to really have that team looking great. Again, you're in the same division as the Chiefs. You're probably not going to be, anywhere threatening for the division. I mean, hell, offensively last year, you were 21st. And that was with Kellen Moore. Again, some of that's Kellen Moore, some of that's the offense. And again, the offense moved the ball. I mean, they were third in passing attempts. They were 13th in yards, so they were moving the ball. It just seemed like they weren't executing a lot of touchdowns. That seems like what the real issue was. Defensively, they were horrid. And that was because Brandon Staley's coaching. That was because health. I don't know. But 24th is bad. That's bad. And they were 23rd in passing attempts, which means they gave up a ton of passing yards. Obviously, i.e. 30th in passing yards. So corner, I could see them definitely addressing within the first 3 rounds. They're definitely not leaving this draft, though, without a top-notch wide receiver. Again, my personal opinion, Malik Nabers is going to probably be that selection at that pick. And one last thing, too, where you're kind of worried, where you know they're going to have to address this defense. 25 fumbles as a team, 22 recovered. Not bad. You lost 3. A lot of fumbles. It's never a good thing. 48 sacks from the defense. So that ties into those passing attempts, yards allowed, not really getting to the quarterback. So hopefully now with Jesse Minter, and being the way that he used those guys in Michigan, he'll have new innovative ways to use Bosa and Matt attacking these different offensive lines. Because again, you're playing Patrick Mahomes. You're playing Pat. And as long as you're playing Pat, you better have the guns. You better have the D linemen that could run, corners that could cover, linebackers that could read and react, because he's going to get his. Pat going to scramble. Pat going to make his plays. Pat Mahomes is going to get his, but you have to ensure that your defense stays fundamental, stays at home on the edges, stick to your teaching tape, learn, be consistent, because again, I love Patrick Mahomes as a football player. I think he's the best quarterback in the league right now, but I ultimately feel like teams beat themselves against him because they get impatient waiting for him to make a move. And then we've seen this with the Chiefs and with Patrick Mahomes. If you get him impatient, you could beat him. And scary thing is, Jim Harbaugh, if you remember very, very closely, very, very keenly, this happened when he was with San Fran. It happened when he was with Michigan. San Fran, Seattle was in the way. Seattle was just in the way. Had some luck, didn't have some luck. Ohio State, very beginning of his tenure, while with the Wolverines, going against the Buckeyes, couldn't beat them. Struggled. And then all of a sudden, lights, switch has been flipped. Now, next thing we know, they're on top. Ohio State hasn't beaten them in a couple years. They're dominant. He's national champion. So he could definitely turn things around there. I'm very excited for the Chargers, very excited for their fan base, and very excited for the potential of what Jim Harbaugh could do. Which leads me into my next segment, the next team, one of my rivals, my team's rivals actually, the New York Football Giants. Woo! The New York Giants. Where do I start? 6-11 last year. Obviously a down year from 2 years prior. 2 years ago they made the playoffs by the grace of God, but made the playoffs. Brian Daboll, third year coming back. Joe Shane, third year GM. Mike Kafka, second year offensive coordinator. Shane Bowen, first year defensive coordinator, and that is due to firing or release, or however they want to soften the blow or cushion it. But the firing of Wink Martindale due to Daboll and them not getting along. And you guys are free to Google that if you think I'm making that BS, making that up, or if it's BS, by all means, you can look that up. There's one of the reasons why Wink Martindale didn't make it throughout the years, because, Daboll. There was reports throughout the year, and definitely in the offseason. You kind of heard it at the owners' meetings if you followed any of it online, or just any, Ian Rappaport's or Adam Schefter's, if you've read any of those reports. The Maras were kind of upset with Daboll. Felt like he kind of showed up a lot of his, he showed up Dave Jones, showed up some of his coaches, the animation, the arguing. I mean, I don't know if they realize it or not. That team is ass. It's kind of hard not to show emotion when you're doing everything in your power to elevate garbage. And it is, you can't put lipstick on a pig and call it Serena Williams. It just ain't happening. It just ain't happening. So at the end of the day, you got to realize maybe that was a little bit much. Maybe he didn't have to do all that, but he was working with crap, and he was trying to make the best of a bad situation. They only have $5.5 million in cap space. Obviously, just mismanagement of the cap and some of the money they spent and some of the new deals. 6 draft picks going into this draft. I mean, when you're this devoid of talent, it's kind of strange when you see a team getting rid of that many draft picks, whether trades, however it works. You need athletic, talented bodies, and that to me just screams they're going to be a trade candidate. 6 is not enough. You need more than 6 picks. I mean, to be honest with you, look at these picks as lottery tickets. So they got 6 lottery tickets. We know the odds. Out of that 6, 2, not 3, 2 will produce. So screams trade candidate or, trade maker for the draft coming up. Obviously, free agency, they had some major departures. Big shocker with Saquon Barkley, obviously signing that deal with the Eagles. Kind of read. I'll be honest with you guys, as an Eagles fan, I didn't believe it. I really didn't believe it. I was hearing the rumors about him going to the Texans. Him and C.J. Stroud, he was going to the Texans, and then last minute I heard Eagles. And come to find out, as the story unfolded, Eagles and Saquon had that deal done the weekend going into free agency. So kudos to Howie Roseman again. But huge loss for the Giants. He was obviously, most of their offensive production. So be interested to see about how they scale or change the offense this year. They lost Xavier McKinney, safety to the Packers. Huge loss. I mean, he was obviously one of their best defensive players. Huge loss. They're going to need to replace him. They lost to Dory Jackson, another big loss. And, these aren't guys that just were bodies. These are guys that were productive for them, that actually helped produce, in the midst of the dumpster fire of a season they were having. Jones getting injured, bad play, interceptions, ineptitude on offense. These 3 guys were shining examples of what you wanted, as a Giants fan, what you wanted a Giant to be. So it's kind of revealing and startling that they're all gone. But, I digress. Going into their free agent acquisitions, he was traded with Carolina to get Brian Burns. Carolina got stiffed. There was a rumored trade. I believe I read it at SportsIllustrated.com. You guys are free to look this up on this article. But I believe there was a proposed trade where the Rams were going to offer Carolina 2 first-round picks. 2 first-round picks for Brian Burns. And Carolina did not take the offer, and instead they took the Giants deal, which I will have to get the details for that in a second. But if I remember correctly, it wasn't 2 first-round picks. So, again, horrible move by the Giants where, horrible move by the Panthers where just ineptitude in the front office. Great move for the Giants. You get a linebacker that's in his prime, dominant, playing at a high level. It's one of those things where, honest to God truth, if going into the season, you're not having Saquon Barkley, you don't have Xavier McKinney, you need to refortify that front line, that defense, which, again, their defense as a whole was very good for them last year. Defensive line especially. The Dexter Lawrences of the world, you need to make sure he's refortified and he has the help that he needs. Because, again, it's coming down to a point where if you don't have the safety play and you're not going to be able to score points, you got to be able to attack guys on defense. You got to have some teeth somewhere to make teams feel it, So, again, great trade for getting Brian Burns. John Runyon, backup lineman, rotational piece for the Packers. He signed. They need linemen. I mean, the Giants needed linemen like yesterday. They needed linemen. I don't know if anybody knows this or not, but when you put into context the fact that the Giants have probably had the worst offensive line play, and I'm not trying to be funny or make it, I'm being serious. They probably have had the worst offensive line play within the past 3 years. So them bringing in John Runyon, Jermaine Illuminor, that just shows they're trying to address the problem. They're trying to really make sure that this isn't an issue going forward. And again, I get it. Daniel Jones, in my personal opinion, he's not good, but the reality of the situation is no quarterback can be good behind an offensive line that gives up that many sacks. And it's just, a turnstile. Woo, here they come. You can't stop anybody. So they were able to pick up Devin Singletary in free agency. Again, losing Saquon Barkley, getting Singletary. Singletary is a guy that scores touchdowns, so I get it. A little bit different dynamic than Saquon. So, again, leads back into my point. Interested to see how the offense is going to look going into this year. They picked up backup quarterback Drew Lock from Seattle. who's been kind of quasi-promised that he's going to compete with Daniel Jones, which he rightfully should, because again, if you've seen the product that Daniel Jones has put out there the past few years, it's nowhere near top echelon quarterback play. But yeah, Drew Lock's going to be able to compete with him. And real quick, guys, I'm sorry. I just was able to pull up that update for that trade that the Giants and the Panthers had pulled off. Yes, the Panthers are horrendous in the front office. The Brian Burns trade consisted of the Panthers sending, basically the Giants sending a second-round choice and a fifth-round 2025 selection and agreeing to a swap of fifth-rounders for the Giants to get pick number 166 and number 144 to Carolina. Horrible trade. Horrible trade if you're Carolina. Take the damn 2 first-round picks. Get Bryce Young some help. But again, that segment was some days ago, just more or less highlighting the ineptitude of some of these front offices and the Giants lucking up and benefiting from, a dumb front office and making sure that they got a great player at a great position, in a position that they needed. Looking even further, we spoke on a massive change. They got to grab a wide receiver in this draft. I mean, I'm not a fan of Daniel Jones. I think Daniel Jones in the NFC East is probably second worst quarterback, realistically speaking. But he has no one to throw to. They keep throwing out Darius Slayton. They grabbed Jalen Hyatt last year, who I think just needs, a little bit more work. Didn't really get as many opportunities, and I think that's because that offensive line was porous, and they gave up, they're very leaky, gave up a lot of interior pressure, especially up the A and B gaps. One of those things where, you can't really get a chance to get a 20 or 30-yard deep ball down the field if my quarterback is getting rushed within 2 seconds. So, again, Jalen Hyatt, is going to have to definitely step up this year, but they're going to have to grab a receiver. And like I said, getting Malik Neighbors with Jalen Hyatt, I think that will be a lot better, with Neighbors, Hyatt, Slayton, that combination, even Isaiah McKenzie, that combination will be better than what they have now, or if not grabbing Neighbors at all. During their top 30 visits, they had Adisa Isaac, who was the edge rusher for Penn State, in for a visit. Well, he's been pretty good for them, so that was definitely, obviously, they need edge rush pressure. Drake May has been in for a visit. Keep an eye on that, because we all know that they've kind of low-key, high-key, loud, out loud, whatever damn analogy you want to use. They pretty much said, we're ready to get off Daniel Jones. It was a mistake giving him the money. We should have gave the money to Saquon, blah, whomever, but they knew they shouldn't have gave Daniel Jones the money. So they're at a point now where I think they're going to try to get off of him. It'll be very interesting to see, because quarterback-wise, looking at it, Drake May was the only quarterback they brought in for a visit. So, very interesting. Wide receivers, Marvin Harrison Jr. I don't think he'll be around for them, but doesn't take, I guess in their case, it didn't hurt to take a look. Some guys I do think will be around, obviously Malik Neighbors, Roma Dunze. Very interesting to see if the Roma Dunze is a pick. Big body, physical receiver, played at Washington. Great hands. So, interesting to see how that works out. Again, the Giants, they got holes. They know they got a lot of things they need to refill, a lot of things they need to touch up on. So, it's going to be very interesting to see how they address the draft and what their plans are going forward, and how they plan to replace the offensive production and even some of the defensive production that they've lost. All right, guys, we're coming up around the tail end of this show today. And again, I thank you guys so much for listening and watching. Again, like, share, and subscribe for those of you that haven't already, those that have been with me so far through this episode. Last segment that I want to touch on, as I previously stated in the first episode, we were going to be talking about all different sports topics. So today I wanted to touch on the NBA play-in tournament, and also as well the NBA playoffs, with specifically today the play-in tournament, just because the games start today. We have 2 great matchups today. 2 great matchups. We got Lakers and Pelicans, which I believe starts at 7:30, and then we have Warriors and Kings, which starts at 10 o'clock this evening, Eastern Standard Time. Very good games, very tough games. The Western Conference, man, I will have no qualms and no reason to lie to you guys. To tell you, I am a diehard Sacramento Kings fan. Like the beam, yes. The Western Conference has been hell this year. I mean, just to give you guys a window so you can understand what I'm saying. The Warriors and Kings are 46 and 36. Anyone, we all know math, that's 10 games over 500. And that is your 9th and 10th seed in the Western Conference. So that just shows you how hard, how difficult the team has been, how difficult things have been for the team. So both teams have had to struggle. It seems like the Kings have kind of struggled a little bit late. The Warriors are kind of catching a little bit of their stride. We'll see. Some of the things that I think that we need to touch on, just some of the notes that I kind of address going into that Warriors-Kings games first, because obviously go Kings like the beam. Defense will be crucial for Sacramento in this game. Sacramento will not be able to win this game without defense. I remember the playoff series last year, and that's what it came down to. They played great defense, but except on Steph Curry. And which leads me to my next point. As best as you possibly can, which is damn near impossible, but let's be honest, it's doable. You're going to have to literally make life for hell, make Steph's life hell tonight. You're going to have to just smother him, be on him. Don't allow him just those random three-point shots. He's going to get his, guys. I mean, he's the greatest damn shooter of all time. He's going to get his, but you got to make it difficult for him. You got to rest your head on that pillow tonight knowing I gave it my all defensively. Offensively, I don't not expect the Kings to show up. They've been one of the best offensive teams for the past 2 years. I expect them to show up there. But you got to minimize Draymond and Klay's potential. To me, minimizing Draymond and Klay is crucial because Draymond, we all know, is a malcontent and a bit of a head case, but he is a savant when it comes to basketball. The IQ is bar none. So it'll be very interesting to see how the reaction between him and Sabonis. We know how last year was very contested between those two. So it'll be very interesting to see how they play. How they play each other, how Draymond more or less plays him. Klay Thompson. Now, he's going to have to treat this like Game 6. So, for the Warriors fans, I know they're hoping they get Game 6 Klay. I'm hoping Game 6 Klay don't show up. I'm being completely honest here. I hope he don't show up tonight. But in all retrospect, looking at the game, the Kings have to minimize Klay Thompson's potential. Klay Thompson, if I'm correct, the last 5 games has been averaging over 20 points. Average for the season is around 19.3, but if you give or take a couple of those games, was 22, 24, 23s, a couple here and there. So you just round about to do mean, medium, most, about 22 points a game. He's starting to heat up. I think Klay realized, the postseason's here. And now he's, so you got to minimize those two. And we got to, Kings got to continue to shoot well from 3. You got to continue to, be efficient and continue to shoot well from 3. You do those things, that can definitely help lead to a victory. As far as the Warriors are concerned, definitely some key points. They got to be better on the glass. I noticed that against Sacramento last year in the postseason, and I noticed just throughout this year, very, very weak on the glass, not as strong as they possibly could have been. Definitely some things they need to touch up and address. So that'd be definitely one of the things I think that Steve Kerr will be looking at as far as defensively and some possibly offensively as well. I just previously touched on Klay Thompson, and like I said, I think he smells the postseason's here. So will the real Klay Thompson please show up? Will Klay Thompson show up? It's a great question. Will Draymond keep his cool? I know I kind of loosely referenced it a little bit ago, but I need to reiterate, y'all. He's only played 55 games this year, and a lot of that wasn't due to injury. So, and for me, I'm always a big proponent on let the young guys get a chance, but I'm very curious to see if we'll experience win out again. I feel as if that Sacramento is their time. If last year wasn't their time, now it's definitely their time. You got this old team on the ropes, but veteran savvy, experienced championship play, it cannot be understated this time of the year. The Kings will have their hands full. They're home again, so we'll see. But I just want to ultimately thank you guys so much for sticking with me again on this episode of episode 3 again of the Blunt Talk Sports Podcast. I want to thank you again. Like, share, and subscribe. Take care, and I will see you guys tomorrow.